Next item is item 9, and this is the Auckland Plan 2050 three-yearly progress report. And Denise O'Shaughnessy, Manager of Strategic Advice, and Janelle Breckel, our Principal Strategic Advisor. Welcome to you both. And can I put the motions up initially? Just show the members, because I'd like to just get a mover and a seconder. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Bartley, can I have a second, please? Councillor Casey, thank you. So we've got the motions on the floor, and now we'll go back to the presentation from Denise and Janelle.
Kia ora koutou. This is our first three-yearly report on the Auckland Plan 2050. If you recall, during the process of developing the plan, it was agreed that there was a need to balance a streamlined set of measures for a more simplified and regular reporting against the need to look more in depth at key intervals to understand how we're tracking against the outcomes we've established in the plan. So this is the first of these reports, and it brings together a range of information and thinking to provide a holistic view of how we're tracking and giving a sense of where we need to focus in the future, so it's a true outcomes-based report. While it's not 3 years since the Auckland Plan was adopted, we considered it important to produce the baseline now, given the Auckland Plan legislation requires the plan to be the basis for alignment of our regulatory funding and implementation plans, so the timing with the 10-year budget program is important. This report is about understanding where we're at with the Auckland Plan and giving a path forward with implementation. It's not about revisiting or amending the plan. It's not suggesting any change in already established strategic direction. You'll see on the slide reference to our full monitoring framework for the plan. So this is included in the committee report today as a 6-monthly update and the development strategy monitoring report. So in addition to the annual scorecard, the 6-monthly update is our way of keeping the plan live. So it reflects changes to data, for example, through the census or other processes, and identifies initiatives which may have an either positive or negative impact on our ability to achieve the plan's outcomes. So it helps to ensure the Auckland Plan continues to remain relevant. The update that's contained in this committee report covers recent census data updates and relevant government reforms. Projections on the census will be released later in the year, so they'll be covered in our next update. The development strategy monitoring report is attached, and that's really for completeness. So this was actually distributed to you last October. And just noting that the data is a bit dated, but this data is supplemented by the monthly housing update. And where the two documents differ is that the Auckland Plan Development Strategy Monitoring Report focuses more on matters that are important to the plan, such as nodes and development areas, so there's more detailed information, and that's produced on an annual basis, and the next one will be produced in September. So I'll just hand over to Janelle now to talk you through the report.
Kia ora tātou. I just want to spend a few minutes covering our process and how we arrived at our opportunities for greater progress that hopefully you've had a chance to review. As Denise mentioned, the Auckland Plan has a number of headline outcome measures, those 33 measures in there, but we recognise that there are plenty of supporting other outcome measures and data sets, and so we endeavoured to look through a full range of measures in order to inform our progress towards the outcomes. They are both quantitative and qualitative measures that we've drawn from to help inform our progress. To this end, we analysed that full range of measures to get a sense of where we are progressing well, and also to get a sense of where we have opportunities for greater progress. As you can appreciate, some data sets were difficult to ascertain trends from. As such, the report has some measures that are reporting at this point in time. Others go a year back, and others where we can, we've gone back 10 years or so in order to determine real trends. So there is variation in how we've reported the trends and measures, but they all collectively point towards some measures of progress and opportunities for greater progress. We used some criteria in terms of identifying our opportunities for greater progress, and These meant that we wanted to focus on what was directly aligned with our outcomes. They also needed to be evidence-based, and they are also areas that we have determined are integral to the future of the outcome. So while it's not necessarily suggesting that we are performing poorly in those areas, we do want to signal the need to continue to make progress in terms of achieving our long-term aspirations. Once we'd narrowed down to our opportunities for greater progress, we involved our subject matter experts. We wanted to provide a greater strategic context in each of those 17 areas. So we looked at our national and global trends and considered our future trends. This is why our report is 80 pages long. We also wanted to look at our local and central government initiatives that are happening in that space. This is not a report to suggest the effectiveness of those initiatives, just merely to provide part of the context and narrative around what's going on in those opportunities for greater progress. So I just wanted to cover some of the headline trends in each of our 6 outcome areas. You would have got this in the form of the beginning of the report, the executive summary. In our belonging and participation outcome, while Auckland residents' perceptions are more positive in areas of trust and reliance on people, and safety in our neighbourhoods and town centres are generally improving, we all are also confronted with rapid population growth and resulting changes in our local areas. In terms of health, our life expectancy is improving and things like smoking is declining, but we still have prevalent issues such as obesity, diabetes, and we are increasingly less active. Mental health continues to be a concern, particularly with our young adults. We do find in this area disparities in relation to ethnicity, age, and location are still present over areas such as health, income, and employment. In relation to our Māori identity and wellbeing, it's important to note that Auckland's Māori are considered across all of our outcomes, but specific to this outcome, we've seen positive trends in relation to income, employment, and education, with the gap between Māori and non-Māori no longer increasing as we had seen previously. Māori's collective asset base continues to grow, but individual wealth is still comparatively lower than non-Māori, and home ownership remains lower. While awareness of te reo Māori is increasing overall, we still have work to do in ensuring that te reo Māori flourishes and that Māori remain connected to their iwi and marae. And we still need to see greater representation of Māori in decision-making and leadership. In our homes and places, we're making great progress in our consented and completed number of dwellings, a large proportion of which are intensive housing to support our quality compact approach. We are experiencing some improvement in housing affordability due to regulatory changes formed by our band and our industry capacity and our ongoing economic strength, although a large majority of residents do not feel that their current housing are affordable, particularly in relation to rents. There's an increasing proportion of residents that meet the criteria of being homeless. Auckland is still one of the most common regions across the country reporting damp homes, and we need to continue to address our residential energy use, which makes up about 5% of Auckland's total emissions profile. We are seeing improvements in our accessibility to public transport. The majority of housing, 95% in urban areas, are within 500 metres of a bus stop, for example. And in 2019, 28% of dwellings were consented to within the 1,500 metre from the rapid transit network. Public transport boardings are increasing, ferry, bus and train, as from 2018 to 2019, as are our cycling counts. We have seen a recent decline in a previously upward trend of deaths and serious injuries on the transport network. And our residents' perceptions of accessibility, affordability and reliability vary across Auckland's communities. As we all know, transport continues to be the largest contributor to emissions, but measures are being taken and improving the management of transport waste. In environmental and cultural heritage, our continued efforts to reduce waste have been reflected in less domestic waste per household than the target. Increasing numbers of our community are engaged in environmental restoration. We have some water quality improving in some areas but worsening in others. Urban development continues to follow the quality compact approach, but we are still seeing the impacts of development on our natural environment. And we need to continue to work on our environmental monitoring to ensure that we have the right measures in place to understand our progress better in this area. And finally, within the opportunity and prosperity area, our income, wages and employment are all improving, but we still have challenges to varying degrees across Auckland with the ability to meet everyday needs. This is largely due to our housing costs. There remains disparities in prosperity across all of our communities. We have greater participation in education, but we are not yet seeing higher levels of qualifications in our young people, which may be reflected in continued difficulties for businesses to find skilled labour. Auckland has improved digital access and many knowledge-intensive industries, but uptake of new technology and investment in research and development remains a challenge. We speak to each of those a lot more in detail throughout the report. So we have seen common themes emerge across all the outcome areas. Most prominently, you will see equity, climate change transition and community resilience as coming through in those areas. We want to be able to use these opportunities for greater progress as a way to further ground the aspirations that we have set out in the Auckland Plan. We think they are a useful way of aligning our strategic direction with our implementation plans, with our regulatory plans and funding programs. That's as per our legislative requirements. And we have done more thinking around potential council levers and roles that could support the opportunities for greater progress, recognising that some will be more direct roles than others in these areas, and remembering that this is an Auckland Plan, a plan for all Auckland. We are hoping that this will make a more direct and focused link between how council can contribute to these long-term aspirations. Thank you.
So just in terms of next steps, after today we will finalise the report and make that available to everyone via the digital Auckland Plan. And as Janelle's just talked about, we will continue to work on the opportunities for greater progress that we've identified to understand what council's levers are and what those mean. We'll distribute the report to local boards to inform the development of local board plans, but as a means of also of providing greater alignment between the Auckland Plan and local board plans. And just to set up the future reporting that will happen, the next annual scorecard, so that's the 33 measures that are in the plan, will be brought to this committee in July. The Development Strategy Monitoring Report, the next annual update, will be in September. And we'll be working towards the next 3 yearly report, which will be for March 2023. That will provide a richer base of evidence to understand how we're tracking against the outcomes, given the amount of data we will have gathered over that period. I just want to acknowledge the outcomes lead. So we have a lead for each outcome in the plan, who are here today from the Strategic Advice Unit: Karen Kirk, Carol Dargy, Nessa Carroll, Adam Morris, Jennifer Davies and Janelle, who leads on the Opportunity and Prosperity outcome. So they're here today to assist with any questions you might have which are more technical, but also to note that the report's been developed collaboratively with the business, with the various experts in the business and with some of our CCOs as well. So our role is not to duplicate their expertise, but to analyse what the evidence is telling us and bring that together with the other contextual information that we've included in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise and Janelle. So that's what the evidence tells us, members, and there are 17, and I'm probably drawing you into those opportunities for greater focus and progress that have been recommended to us today by our staff. 17 opportunities in the 6 outcome areas, and then if you look at the motions before us, That's reinforced in motion B, and I'll leave that with you. Are there questions? Councillor Bartley, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, thank you for this report. I wanted to ask, because I think it's really important, especially since it's the basis for alignment with the 10-year budget, given the statement on page 90 about the distinct geographical patterns of deprivation continuing to exist across Auckland. We've seen the ATEED, Low Prosperity Household Survey, which distinguishes, deprivation based on local board areas, the disparities that you mentioned in the report in population groups and areas. If we're being really true to the shared prosperity outcome, why don't we target outcomes to lift prosperity by location as an opportunity for greater progress?
Through the chair. So that's a really important point that you've identified in the report. So one of the focuses was that we would try to identify spatial data and differences across local board areas. We have been able to do that to some degree, but we have to be careful with some of the data that's available in terms of the sample size. So the quality of life survey gives us some indications, but we don't necessarily know enough yet to be able to specifically identify that. In some areas we do. I think in some of the transport areas we actually have data on different perceptions in different local board areas. But where possible we can identify it, we will, and that's something that we will continue to work on as we get more information to build understanding in those areas.
Can I ask another question? Is this something you could work on before your next report? I think I read in here there's a report coming to us in July 2020.
We will where possible. It will still depend on the amount of data that is available to us to actually determine that. So we have to be careful that we don't use surveys that don't have enough sample to give us as much validity as we'd like to be able to make those statements. But we certainly will we look to identify that as much as we can.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stewart, and welcome back.
Thank you. Right, I'll just have to rest my glasses on my nose, so I'm a bit hard to read. Okay, page 77, if we can just have a look at page 77, just looking at the dwelling consents for intensive housing. Have you got any data on homes that because of the intensification and because of the unitary plan, that are because of flooding and stormwater issues, that people are now not insured, their homes are no longer insured because of the intensification in areas that we know that there are serious problems and we're inflicting this pain on them?
Through the chair, no, we don't have any data on that.
I just think because here we've got data here on reporting on damp homes and rental dwellings and the likes, and I have been a bit of a broken record, and I have been since 2000, 2004, back in Manukau time, and back here, about, in particular, the Howard catchment, where back in 2004, had Audit New Zealand and Montgomery Watson Engineering do a report on that catchment, and there was a lot of flooding issues, and we tried to get the Unitary Plan Committee to understand that there were some serious issues in that particular area, where in the catchment that I'm thinking about, which is the Angelo catchment, there is at the moment there's a whole lot of residential terrace apartments going in. One at the moment that looking like it's going to be probably happening is just on 700 square metres. And 17 units going to be built on that, and it's actually in an area where, when we have an extreme weather event, which we did, we had two in 2018, where you could actually row a boat almost on the land that they're actually going to be building on, and then next door to this the one that's just looks like it's going to have 17 units. A developer's just purchased another couple of properties, so there's now the potential of 55 residential terrace apartments being built in this catchment, and this would have to be the most. And I've been talking with Healthy Waters and Water Care and planners and everybody understands that this is one of the most, probably the worst catchments in probably the Auckland region. I think it would be really, really useful and really good to get the data on that and to find out how many houses, and it won't be just in Howe, it'll be all across the region because of this unitary plan and Newlyn and wherever, how many houses are now not insurable. And back in 2002, Mr. Day, who used to be a reporter here, I'm not sure if he's still coming, he did report on something that I did say, and I said back in 2002 that before the audit report, I said what's going to happen, because we know we have so many areas that have got serious flooding issues, we're going to have a tsunami of people that are going to have properties that are uninsurable.
Councillor, I'm wondering, you've got quite a lot of detail here.
But it
I'm
is
wondering if
something that really does need to be discussed. It really, really is.
Can you
very,
send an
very-
email to me and I'll make sure the staff pick that up, because I don't think this is with...
Well, I'm just thinking that if you've
With
got
the-
data here for damp homes and rental dwellings, and I think it's really, really important that those people that are out there now suffering, that are living in homes that are uninsurable, and people are still living since the 2018 floods with jib halfway up the wall, still not put in because they can't afford to do anything and they're just waiting for the next big rain. So, it's serious. This is serious stuff.
If you could email me or directly to the Director of Strategy, we can look into those questions that you're raising. It's probably not at this report stage that we can consider it. Valid concerns
Those are valid
for your
concerns.
constituents.
Thank you.
Could you please put that in an email and we'll pick it up? Thank you. Councillor Koo?
Tēnā kouroa, thank you for all the work that's gone into the report through the Chair. Tēnā koe, thank you, Mr. Chair. Back when the Auckland plan was finalised, a political working group was set up to consider the targets and how they would be developed, because the targets were taken out of the updated Auckland plan. I appreciate there were reasons that wasn't taken forward, but I wondered if you could please provide us with an update around what has happened to the thinking around where the targets will sit, and what's the plans for moving forward on targets, because that's obviously something that we're now not able to measure or report against. Thank you.
Through the Chair, that's correct. There was a decision at that point when the plan was adopted to develop shared targets with government around 4 areas. So we haven't been able to progress the development of those shared targets. So the thinking subsequent to those attempts was that there would be an opportunity to set targets through other planning and policy processes that council may either do or may do jointly with governments. So one example of that is in the housing area through the National Policy Statement on Urban Development Capacity. So there's been a target identified through that. The other area is in the social inclusion area, where there's a cross-sectoral homelessness group and some work going on there so there's an opportunity within that process to set some targets. And in the transport area, there's some opportunities through the Auckland Climate Action Framework to do that. So in answer to your question, we haven't been able to progress and agree the shared targets with government across all of those areas, but we think that there are still opportunities and pieces of work which are coming up to do so.
Thank you, Councillor Coombe. Councillor Casey?
The belonging and participation part of the Auckland plan is always the one that's been closest to my heart, and never has it been more important than these horrible days where people willy-nilly are being discriminated against because of the ethnic origin. And there's 2 questions I want to ask. Both of them relate to discrimination. There's 2 parts in here that are very disappointing. One is, and you didn't mention it in the report, that's why I'm asking you to mention it now, or your subject expert, and that is that the discrimination that people are experiencing has not changed. And so I think that when I saw the good remarks on page 77, that most Aucklanders continue to view ethnic and cultural diversity positively, it's not reflected in the actual trends inside the report, especially that one. So in the last 12 months, 17% of Aucklanders surveyed say they've experienced discrimination. There's no change to that. So one would have thought, if it's as good as you say it is at the front, then there would be a decline in that. So can you talk about discrimination? And I've got another question after that. Are you able to a breakdown of that? What kind of discrimination? Was it ethnic discrimination or was it some other kind?
Thank you for that, Councillor. Through the chair, that statistic in the executive summary refers to a direct question from our residents survey, our quality of life survey, that asks residents about their ethnic and cultural diversity views, and so most will agree that it makes their neighbourhood a good place. That is different from the question around whether people are experiencing diversity. In terms of a breakdown, that would be something that we could look into.
Experiencing discrimination, not diversity.
Right.
Experiencing discrimination.
That's right, discrimination.
Yeah.
So we do have that statistics, as you know. That breakdown we could do again in terms of sample size. It may be indicative only, but it could be broken down probably by ethnicity and local board area, but we'd have to have caution around that, so we can provide that to you.
Do you have a sense of it? No.
Do you want me to?
We just asked Karen Kirk, who's the Belonging and Participation Outcome Lead, if she can assist with any more information on that.
Yes, as Janelle's already said, it's mainly from the Quality of Life survey, and you're right, it hasn't changed, and 17% is quite a sizable number.
Huge.
We don't have follow-up questions around what kind of discrimination they experienced, but I was just thinking, in the evidence report for belonging and participation, we drew on some of the Human Rights Commission data. That might give us a picture nationally, but I can't remember. I don't think they break it down to Auckland region level. But it's possibly something that we could consider in framing questions for the new Quality of Life survey. We can provide that breakdown by ethnicity and age and possibly location, but we're getting down to quite small numbers. But I think this is a question for future.
I think it has to
survey
be.
design.
Can you comment also on, I didn't think this was, even though you've said that everybody's happy and living together, 54% are happy. That's just half. Mm-hmm. That's half. That means the other half's not happy. I didn't equate that to being a happy society, an integrated, inclusive, happy society. It doesn't say that to me.
Yes, and that's basically why I've highlighted this as an opportunity for further progress. There's quite significant variation when you go down to local board level. And I think some local boards maybe need a bit more help in promoting cohesion or connection within the area, which we already do through local events, local board initiatives. But yes, the statistics vary quite dramatically across the region.
Thank you. You might be the answer to my second question, which relates. It's another one that is really disappointing, and that's the trust in council. And I always refer to this, but you know, we're getting worse. We're going backwards. From 2016, trust or confidence that Auckland Council makes decisions in the best interest of Auckland has declined from 34% in 2016 to 29% in 2018. And you haven't really, and the other one is, of course, the public, those who believe in the public that they can influence public council decision making has again decreased from 36% to 31%. Any comments on that? I mean, those are shocking statistics, and I'd love some discussion. That was not acknowledged in your report either.
Yes, I did hesitate about that, including that. But belonging and participation does cover representation and participation in decision making. There are other surveys that Council carries out, and I believe Stephen Town was talking quite positively about quite a recent survey where we're beginning to see trust actually improve. So yes, I can look into those surveys as well and possibly supplement the information in the report with that.
And if you've got any magic bullets, please share.
It's just through the chair also, if I could just add, a part of the work in doing this is we've landed on the 17 opportunities for greater progress that we've put in the report, but also through our work we've identified areas that we think need more research and investigation. So that's part of what we will continue to work on.
And through the chair, could I further add that we do need to be cautious around the quality of life survey and how much, in terms of whether we state increases and decreases, are statistically significant. So it's possibly in the next survey, if we continue to see that as a trend, we may sort of identify that a little bit more clearly, but just note that caution there.
Thank you. Now I've got a question from Councillor Cooper next. Can we just make sure that we have one mic on at a time to ensure we all hear the speaker? Councillor Cooper.
Thank you. I just had some questions around with your opportunity and prosperity outcome and then your transport outcome. There doesn't seem to be anything linked together. How are we showing, because why I'm asking is a lot of poverty, transport poverty, decreases prosperity, right? So we don't seem to link the two. In prosperity, we talk about digital access, tourism, education, and then we look transport and we go perceptions of public transport reliability, and we're going in some areas it's not great, but we have no, I mean, a lot of people in my area, we've got really high Pacifica Māori and quite deprived people in our area, and especially Henderson Massey Local Board, but it doesn't address that in your prosperity. And so how are you showing, to me it doesn't talk about our opportunities to make that better, because that's absolutely one of the obstacles for prosperity, but the transport issue doesn't address it, and neither does the prosperity. I wonder how, if you do look at that as something that intersects.
Thank you. Through the chair, you can break down our living costs, and with that will be things like our heating and transport and that type of thing. I suppose what we have drawn out is that housing costs are the things that significantly contribute to our discretionary income, and transport doesn't feature as much in that breakdown as, say, housing or other things.
So where do you measure though? Because if you look at people that live a very long way from jobs, a considerable amount of their money goes to transport, especially when you've got no viable public transport.
Through the chair, that's right. So we can measure that. We can pull out what people are spending on transport. So we can do that for you.
That's what I'm asking is, if we're doing a measure about prosperity, we need to factor that in, because that can affect prosperity. And when we're looking at the transport, we seem to be talking about perceptions, and we're not talking about how we're making it better for people to get to work. I suppose that's what I'm looking for, and I can't see, because that's a significant, I suppose, implication on how people live and whether they can actually, it's even worthwhile going to work.
Through the chair, just to add, I think that's a really important point in terms of connecting the outcomes more, and I think we can look at that. The ensuring equity and access to transport is intending to address the issues that you're talking about, and I think what you're asking for is to then connect that to the prosperity and how that's affecting overall prosperity.
Completely turning everything upside down.
Thank you.
Maybe further development of the next report. Yeah.
Councillor Hills.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Councillor Cooper absolutely nails it, and I was going to say something quite similar. So questions are like, how do we fix all these things? But I guess it's us and the government and others, the decision makers, the budget makers. What I quite like about the Auckland plan is it says what we need, and then we try and fix it as opposed to a fully funded plan. My thing is, what are we doing to combine, as Councillor Cooper says, all the things to get biggest bang for buck, I guess, to us and the government. So you've got mental health, you've got obesity, connectivity, transport, emissions. Those are all connected. Is there a more of a body of work to kind of narrow it into a little bit spoon feed the politicians and others who need to be focusing on what we can do where, and then that has, there's some alarming statistics in here around children on public transport dropping and different things. If we're able to add all those things together, then you've got a far greater impetus for us and government to push for the things that have been promised. So I guess I'm looking at this and there's screeds of stuff, but it's just going to get lost if we don't kind of nail what we can do.
Through the chair, thank you, Councillor Hills. That's a really good point. I guess one of the things to remember about this report and this plan is it's a 30-year plan, so the outcomes are 30-year outcomes, and what we're trying to do is provide an assessment at this point of where we are along that journey to getting towards those outcomes. So the purpose is then to take the opportunities that we've identified and use them as a basis for all our other planning and strategy processes. It is, as the legislation requires us, it's supposed to be a basis of alignment for that. We haven't identified a particular process that you're talking about to bring together what might be the most important ones, but we see that as being part of the decision making around 10-year budget and a range of other strategies that we might be doing. For example, the refresh of the Thriving Communities strategy. It would be there that we would hope that this would guide thinking and decision making in that respect. Even, for example, the submission today on biodiversity, that we're hoping that what comes out of this report can provide some guidance without any sense of necessarily prioritisation in particular years.
Thank you, Councillor Hills. Councillor Bartley, please.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. Very, very interesting stuff here. I also share the same concern about that Councillor Casey shares regarding the 29% in 2018 of those who believe, in the confidence of Auckland Council's decision making being in the best interests of Auckland. And I was interested in whether that was fleshed out any more data as to, well, who do people think is making those decisions, and in whose best interests are those decisions being made, if that was ever broached in your research there. I'm also interested in how things make it into the opportunities for greater progress, because if you read the report, it looks all right, like it's not a worry. But then when you carry on reading, it's bad, like it's pretty bad. And some of that stuff doesn't transport over into your opportunities for greater progress. And so I was just, all this whole report. I'm also interested in, you talk about Māori identity and wellbeing outcomes. You mentioned in here co-governance, increasing Māori capacity in decision-making and leadership. And then I see there's some statistics about people unhappy with diversity. And does it go any further into looking at which groups they're unhappy about in terms of diversity? Are there some statistics about how people feel about Māori? And is there any correlation with the Te Puna Maunga Authority? Because from my experience, I have never seen or experienced as much racism as I have since I've joined the Maunga Authority, and I'm hoping that that is reflected in some of the research that we're getting here, or some of the data, because it is bad, really bad. Even personally, racist stuff. But anyway, so yeah, take it back to the report. Those were my questions. Thank you.
Janelle or Denise, or both?
Thank you. Through the chair, I'm just trying to remember the first question, which was a simple answer of no, that wasn't broken down in terms of the survey
who makes the
response.
decisions. Yeah. Okay.
So that's my simple answer to that. In terms of our opportunity for greater progress, again, we had to go through a criteria of what we could see at that point in time, what the data was telling us. We had to back that with a lot of contextual evidence. And also remembering that we are only 18 months into our refreshed 2050 plan, and so we do expect that some of these issues will further emerge as we continue monitoring. So by the time we come to our next 3-yearly monitoring report, some of these things will be able to come out more significantly, and we can identify those again as opportunities for greater progress.
And Māori leadership, diversity, discrimination. Or is it an opportunity for something we can look into?
So where there, through the chair, where there isn't data currently in the report, it's because we haven't been able to identify that data, and certainly in some areas there is a shortage of data, and so one of the things will be to identify gaps and think about how we can make improvements to greater understanding in the future. But what we've done is it's an evidence-based report, so we have just reported on what we've been able to identify.
Thank you. So it is, in some ways, it's early days, and we, as time progresses, those data sets will become a lot more comprehensive, and those sorts of questions have been asked before, and we are building those data sets now, whereas prior, we just didn't know because the data sets weren't in place. We weren't doing the homework. We're now doing the homework, and that's fundamental to the Auckland Plan. It's not just about setting the vision, it's about knowing your steps to achieving it. We've got the plan, and now we're stepping towards it and measuring our progress and reporting back so that we can ask these very questions as checks. So thank you. Councillor Walker.
I've got a big question first, and it goes in part to yourself, Mr. Chairman. And that is around the recommendations. 1 is to receive, 2 is to approve, and so on. I'm going to be raising a number of issues, and I have a concern around the implications of this report. So my question is, what's the timeline? What's the necessity around us receiving this and then making decisions around approving things, particularly if councillors have some serious concerns? Are we on a straitjacket timeline?
Well, look, you did actually refer to me then as chair, so all reports are timely. Now, we're moving into an annual plan process, and our staff are starting to form up the next 10-year budget. And you can see there from the B, that helps the staff that are working on various work streams that are referred to there. It helps them, it gives them some guidance. So this report is perfectly timed, in my view. I wouldn't have received it, and I'm sure the staff wouldn't have brought it if it was not required to be considered by us now. And members, we should actually have good reason why we defer reports. And I think when I first came to this council, a number of reports were deferred for convenience because we didn't like what we read, and we were wanting, quite different advice. We didn't like the advice. This is the advice, and I would say let's proceed and consider this report. We've had some days to reflect on this report, and on this particular item, I haven't actually fetched, and I don't think the staff have fetched any questions offline on this particular report. But I'm happy to take them now. Councillor Walker.
If I can speak further then. I'm comfortable with receiving the report, but frankly, in terms of approve the opportunities for greater progress, I really think that there's considerably more effort that we need to apply to this. The Auckland Plan is one of the most significant documents that we work on, and if I gloss over a few things, the abject feeling of a sense of community the suicide rates amongst youth are amongst the highest in the world. The 148,000 children living in households unable to afford 6 or more essentials for a decent standard of living, the quarter of households that are damp, the quarter of households that are in areas subject to flooding, and I could go on. There's no mention in here, for example, around the recent State of the Gulf report as it goes to part of our marine environment, which is the Hauraki Gulf, and then we've got the Manukau and the Kaipara, and frankly, they're not looking good either. I could go on, and I'm sure that other councillors will raise concerns as well. What follows is that there's a real task for us to apply ourselves, and on my part, I am not going to approve the opportunities for greater progress, because I don't think they go far enough. I think we need to have more discussion and we need to drill down. There was a political working party set up some time ago. Frankly, that needs to meet. There's a high priority. So I'm just raising this as a question around particularly approving the opportunities for greater progress. The other question I've got just around the format of this report, and I'm assuming it's digital, does this report link to a multiplicity of other reports, so that if Aucklanders want to inform themselves around a particular aspect, the number of houses that are damp, the plight of our youth in many respects, and environment or the like, can they do that?
Through the chair, yes, they absolutely can. It's not online yet because it hasn't yet been published, but you can refer to the references and there are links to all of the reports that we have drawn our evidence from.
Okay, and I think the point that I'm making here, Mr. Chair, is the necessity for this report to be as user-friendly as possible. I mean, I can read it, but I would suggest for a lot of Aucklanders it could be made more user-friendly, and I don't know whether there's time for that. And again, that goes to my question around approving this at this point. So I'll have some comments later, and I'll certainly be raising some concerns.
You made comments then. Now, I can't have two speaking turns, so you did make actually comments then.
I'll make sure the comments are different.
You've just made comments. So look, members, I'm not heavy-handed with standing orders, but if you speak and you make comments, it's a speaking turn because it's moved and seconded. So we need to be very aware of the standing orders, though I'm pretty liberal in many respects. But please, to ensure that the meeting flows and everybody gets a fair hearing here, if we could be aware of the standing orders, I think the meeting will go a lot better.
I thought I asked a number of questions and I substantiated them, but correct me, I may be wrong.
Councillor Coombe. Councillor Coombe, you don't have a speaking. Member Namani.
Kia ora. We have a number of comments as the IMSB, and we do acknowledge that it's a process. It's a 30-year process, and this is the first tranche of it, I guess. And the results are mixed across all the outcomes. But we wanted to make a few comments on where we think the identified opportunities for greater progress. We believe there are some points and gaps that have been missed. And I think I just want to kind of take through that. Belonging and participation. We believe it's important that, of course, diversity is important, but within that, you have to maintain the bicultural nature of the country that's established by the treaty that enabled a multicultural society to exist. So what we don't want over time is for that to be missed as we move through the 30 years, particularly, with population growth in Auckland. Māori identity and wellbeing. the opportunities align with the board priorities, but we do note there's no dedicated funding for te reo, and that's something that could be addressed in the LTP. Environment and cultural heritage outcomes. The outcome has very little cultural heritage measures, and that was something that we debated ad infinitum in the political working group. That was the very thing we didn't want to see. And in this first report, we're seeing that cultural heritage component is losing out to environmental reporting, and we believe that there's an opportunity to develop a new approach to protecting and affirming Māori cultural heritage, and that I think there's already been agreement that there's a gap there through discussions with our Secretariat. So it's something that we actually think it should be a headline measure of the Auckland Plan. Homes and places. We just make a note that officers haven't yet reported to the Planning Committee on the actual detail of council groups' approach to housing, nor have they responded to the strategic Kāinga action plan. So we're just noting that there. Opportunity and prosperity, we think that the opportunity should be developed also at a sub-regional level. It picks up on a point made by Councillor Bartley. That starts to address a number of the equity issues of access and affordability to training and employment. We do have a comment about the overall performance framework. Just from our working of it, we have a view that there's no obvious architecture or intervention logic. It's been relatively piecemeal across the council group. And we also note that there's no centre of excellence that can guide and provide integration in terms of the development of input, output and outcome measures. And we're watching with interest in terms of some of the outcomes performance framework being developed underway by Te Wakaangamua, because we wouldn't like to see that there's some risk of rework or duplication around that stuff. Quality and breakdown of data. We know there are issues and challenges around the census data for Māori. We have them ourselves when we try to measure. But there is a need to break down the ethnicity data and statistical data for local board areas. And, we're committed to working with REMU, alongside REMU and others, to kind of try and tackle that. And I think, overall, it's a helpful report. It helped us to think about the big issues. And also for us to try and link that when we talk about the next LTP. Housing affordability is a long-term project of effort that's critical for Māori, and I've already mentioned the kind of gap that at least we see right there. And I think equity is a crucial matter for the IMSB, and that needs to become woven into our long-term decision making, particularly at a sub-regional level. So yeah, they're our comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Namani. And Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Unlike some of my colleagues, I'm not at all flustered by the 29% trust in decision making, because in reality that represents a 10% improvement on our own citizen insight monitoring. So I'll be partying like it's 1999 tonight. We're going to hit that 30%. In all seriousness, though, this is a very disturbing report, and I thank you for it, because as much as we pick up bits and pieces in the paper and other resources, I think this ties a lot of for what me are the fundamental concerns to do with quality of life and experiences of significant parts of our population. It really is quite stark. If you look at the the summary report, you get a sense of that, in terms of belonging and participation. We know we have obesity and mental health have worsened. Physical activity for children and adults has been declining. Less money available after housing costs. Well, less money. So wages may have gone up a little bit, but there's less money. That's what matters. At the end of it all, people have less now than they had before. If you look at Maori, on the face of it, it doesn't seem to be as bad a decline. Income gap is not widening, but not closing. Lower levels of home ownership. That's probably because it can't get too much worse than it already is. So they've hit rock bottom, just like a lot of Pacifica. So that's not really too uplifting. If we go to the crucial section to do with homes and places, some improvement in housing affordability, I would suggest that's just around the edges. When I look across my ward, it's all the 800, 900, 1.2 million stuff. So there might be a few little pockets, but I would suggest that any change there is entirely incidental. Increasing proportion of residents meet the criteria of being homeless. Auckland is one of the most common regions across the country reporting damp homes. So that's the kind of headline, rather euphemistically entitled mixed progress. If we go into the detail a little further, there's little snippets there that actually make things seem even worse. If we look at health and well-being, we drill down on some of these statistics. 15% of children obese in 2019, 26% in poor areas. That's 1 in 4 kids. 1 in 4. If we go to 33% of Aucklanders had a World Health Organization wellbeing score of less than 13. That's 1 in 3. And that's indicative of poor emotional well-being and of poor mental health. 1 in 3 Aucklanders. That's unbelievable. If you go to the kind of summary comment that talks about household incomes, and here we're talking about the percentage of Aucklanders who report not having enough money to meet their everyday needs for things such as accommodation, a roof over your head, food, something to eat, clothing, something to put on you while you go out in the rain. That's almost 1/5 of Aucklanders. So those figures are really quite staggering when you put them all together, and I would suggest that disconnect or that lack of equity between different parts of Auckland has been never more clearly spelled out. And we've made reference here to a lot of statistics, Mr. Chair, and reports, and that's been impressive. But I can't help but feeling probably, for me, one of the most revealing pieces of research that has been revealed in recent times was a very good article in the Herald a couple of weeks ago, which tracked the long-term decline in the construction of low-cost housing. This was based on research by Kay Saville-Smith, who's a housing researcher, and essentially that confirmed what any of us that have lived in Auckland for any length of time knew anyway from what was happening on the ground, was that since the 1960s there's been a phenomenal decline in the government capital assistance to low-cost new builds. Now, I don't mean social housing here. I mean the sorts of big suburbs that existed in the 60s and 70s, like in Birkdale, like in Henderson, which were low-cost, accessible housing to people on reasonable incomes. So someone could capitalise on their family benefit for a deposit. There'd be a state advances loan that was easily achievable for a one-income family. And all these other things came from that. So that was security, emotional well-being, access to education, an environment that all the kind of social factors came of as a natural consequence of having your own home, a good home, a dry home, a safe home, in a neighbourhood where there was sense of community presence and continuity. Now, that piece of research, which was very well covered in this article, I would suggest is absolutely pivotal to understanding that historical context with which we find ourselves with these appalling statistics now. It's a big part of that. So I would urge, Mr. Chair, that perhaps that work of Kay Saville-Smith be incorporated into any assessment of our current predicament and how we might best represent that to government, given especially the fact that the council is naturally constrained in a number of fundamental areas what we can actually do. But that overall trend painted the picture of where we are now.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Important points. That particular research I'm not aware of, but maybe the staff are, and it sounds like it's worth distributing to councillors. If we can find that, locate it and distribute it, that would be good. Thanks, Councillor Watson. I have Councillor Hills, please.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, once again, thank you. This is comprehensive and it's good. Thank you, Chair, as well. This is fantastic to have all these indicators, to have all this information. We do focus too much on stats of just the infrastructure or the hard stuff, the buildings, the numbers, but they do tell a story. There are, as Councillor Watson and others have said, there are some extremely depressing things in these indicators, but we've known them for a while. This is not new information. Around the edges, we might be a bit disappointed. I didn't realise we'd dropped in kids using public transport. There's also some sad, and obvious indicators around connection with family and time with family, which would, probably relate to congestion or people living much further away from jobs. So nights and mornings are alone for many people. I want to talk about some of the good things. We are hitting some good indicators in the housing consents. The last government and the current government really ramping up the Housing New Zealand builds, and we've contributed to that with those consents. You're seeing it around Auckland that there is dramatic increase in social housing, state housing being built, which is clearly needed but not fast enough. Around mental health, it won't have shown any indication of change, but the budget last year, $1.9 billion into mental health, which is phenomenal. I think it's 20 times more than we've ever seen before. So that is going to take a while to come up, but that is what many of us have been asking for with our terrible, horrendous suicide stats, which cover more Māori, more young people, more of the rainbow community, more Pacifica, people on lower incomes. The people who are most affected of every indicator in our community, suicide and mental health, also crosses those boundaries. In our areas around cycling, fantastic, 3.8 million trips a year, public transport, 104 million. These are good indicators, but why are those things happening? They're happening because we're investing. So why aren't we investing more? Why aren't we lifting and driving things harder? Because we know when we give people options, when we make things easier for people, they will use those things. They will connect more. They will use low emission or no emission ways to get around the city. But we need to be driving that more. It shows here what happens when you invest in the right things and you get the outcomes you want, even probably higher than we expected, with an 80% increase in public transport use in 10 years is pretty phenomenal for any city. So for me, it's what we're doing. We need to step up our game. The government desperately needs to step up their game. We've heard things like the green card for community service holders to make public transport cheaper. We've heard that for almost 3 years from the government. We still have no indication of when that's coming, why it's not coming. Public transport, I don't think that the government is helping us out as much as they can in that area. We need transformation, but we cannot fund it through rates. We cannot necessarily fund everything we need to do through property taxes. We need the support of government if we want to transform our city from a mental health, congestion, but climate change, carbon emissions. We can't do that on our own. So I'm still confused at where that is. Around housing, we know affordable housing without capital gains tax and other things, there isn't a lot going on that is going to dramatically change the gap of housing affordability. In the state housing place, social housing, that's phenomenal. That is good. We need more of that, but there isn't much in the area for first-time buyers, younger people and people getting in that housing security of buying or long-term tenure. There's good noises happening, but I am worried we've missed the boat on that again. So I guess I'm excited. This is good, but how I want to make sure we're driving some of this and connecting those things around mental health, connection, poverty, jobs, housing, where everything is in our city, bringing those things together and selling it to the government and ourselves and to business on easy ways to make all those indicators link up. If we're not linking them up, people just go, the problem's too big, we can't do anything about it. But if you start going, if you invest here, you're going to get great outcomes over and over and over. And people expect us to, and to the trust and confidence, that's whether it's our fault when we pick up all the nasties and don't talk about the positives. I mean, generally everything we do gets high, 90% support for our public transport system. Our libraries are really supportive. Every time we test anyone in our events in our community facilities, sports grounds, it's all really high. And then you ask people if they like council, they say no. So it's like they like the stuff we do, that's another conversation. But, that they don't necessarily see it's council doing those things. So I think we're on our way, but we've known most of this. None of this is a surprise to me. There's some small indicators that I'm like, damn it, I thought we were doing better than that, but nothing should be surprising. We know what the issues are. It's just how fast we're willing to go, who's willing to pay for it, how the government can be a bit bolder on a number of things to help us. We're not asking for everything, but we cannot do a lot of this on our own. We just can't. And the Auckland Plan was never designed for us to be doing that. So I think, we need to step up our game, but we also need to demand more of others as well. And there's an election year, we need to be demanding it of every party of what they're going to do for us, and they can compete with, the biggest bang for buck is spending it here, in my opinion, in Auckland, if they want to really change these things for New Zealand. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hills. Now, Councillor Walker, I'll allow you a few more comments. Can you be brief, succinct on those comments, please?
Well, I seek your guidance. I just wanted to add an amendment just by way of addition. I can do that now or later.
No, I'm sorry you can't, because you've already spoken once and I'm giving you a second chance.
No, I had some questions. And I did indicate that I was going to be speaking later from the outset.
So I'm just ruling. You've already spoken. You're not able to move an amendment.
Well, I don't regard that as particularly fair, but that's my view and obviously not yours.
Councillor Newman.
Yeah, thank you. These are revealing and sobering. I don't know how you can deal with issues of poverty without having a very strong focus on employment pathways, because to me the best social policy response to poverty is paid employment. At its heart, there just are not the employment pathways there for people in our community who need that employment. And therein lies the problem, because you can have all the government interventions you like, but ultimately you have to live a long life and be sustained through that life through regular paid employment. And if you don't have it, you're going to struggle. Therein lies the problem. So at its heart, what Aucklanders need is access to jobs, and a lot of jobs, and well-paying jobs. They need to be able to access those jobs too, in terms of their transport needs. The report reflects that a lot of what we do is about addressing issues of equity and access and affordability. Well, I've been around this table now for just over 3 years, and I continue to be surprised that so much of what we do in relation to public transport is about increasing the PT offering, transport choice to those people in our community who actually have the most transport choice. What we don't tend to do is that we don't fund the new services to people who don't have public transport to begin with. We ought to. But no, the low-hanging fruit is about giving choice to those people who actually are the most resilient, who have the services, and we want to expand the services to them. The hard stuff is about expanding the services to people in communities such as mine who don't have the public transport to begin with. And then we lament the fact that we need Mill Road. Well, why do you need Mill Road? Well, you don't have public transport as an alternate means to get from A to B. So that's what we need to do. We actually need to do the hard stuff in the PT space. And frankly, first home buyers don't need a capital gains tax. What first home buyers do not need is Housing New Zealand trying to outbid them for every single house that goes on the market, because that's what's happening. And I've got first home buyers aggrieved that they ended up being outpaced by the state using taxpayers' money to buy homes that they could have otherwise afforded if Housing New Zealand actually got on with the business of building more homes as opposed to using tax dollars to outpace first home buyers and buying those existing homes. So I think there's a lot of scope in here for us to reflect on the things that we do, and there's a lot of scope in here for us to reflect on the things that we need to have central government doing. And it is a joined up conversation. I accept the tough stuff that's in here, because I think that we have to wear our share of the responsibility for this. But beyond that, there are certainly policy outcomes that need to be addressed at central government too, and that needs to form the basis of future advocacy. So thank you very much for your report.
Thank you, Councillor Newman. That draws us to the end of this discussion, and I thank you for all the valid contributions. In your opening words there, Councillor Newman, I heard the word sobering, and it certainly is. And that was the word that was in my head as well when I started to read some of this information. But members, we wouldn't be reading this information if we didn't have measures in place to actually monitor our long-range picture of how the city will unfold. So that's the important thing. We're building those data sets now. We're doing the research. We didn't do that before. We wouldn't be able to ask and make comment on these enormous challenges of Auckland, and those challenges are shared, as Councillor Hills pointed out, if we did not have a plan, and if we did not have a plan with measures. And that is a big shift for us. So we're on the way. It's an enormous journey, but we should not shy away from it. And the recommendation B is really where we don't shy away. We take this on and we look at those 17 opportunities, and we ask our staff to go away now and consider how that might look through different plans, and, as Councillor Hills reminded us, how we stump up to support those plans through budget considerations. So thank you. This has been a very valuable discussion, and the motion is moved and it's seconded, so I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Contrary, no, and declare that carried. Thank you. And Councillor Watson, yes, can you just liaise with the staff and we'll get that distributed?